What is your stance on all the illegal aliens running around?
I would say, number one, before we even address that problem, we have just got to look at Colonel Travis drawing the line in the sand. Remember, the Alamo should be our policy. Those men crossed the line knowing they would die. That's when Texas was born. Why even bother to call ourselves Texas if we don't respect our own border? This is a joke. I've talked to law enforcement at the Fort Worth Sheriff's Convention. I addressed those guys, and I talked to them all individually. They tell me that, and I ask them, are things tightening up now finally? Is things getting better? No. Things are getting worse. Trafficking, people, drugs, weapons is getting worse and worse and worse inside Texas. It's crime syndicates. It's sophisticated as hell. You see these 20-car caravans with spotter cars and everything, with no regard for human life whatsoever.
Well, when we look at Nuevo Laredo and Laredo, the State Department has put out travel advisories saying it's as dangerous as some areas of the West Bank of Israel.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And maybe we need to take a page from the Israelis, because my personal opinion, not as a Jew, but as a Texan, is that Israel and Texas has kind of a kindred spirit. The people have kind of a Davy Crockett, John Wayne spirit, and it's a certain kind of resolve that I think America could sometimes learn something from.
You talking about building a wall on the border?
There's worse ideas than that. I just think the Mexican government is so corrupt and so hypocritical, and they're the ones that are really making out in this thing. They're doing very well. It's their second biggest industry.
Yeah, they're using us as a steam valve.
Sure.
And then they're also, at the same time, 30-something billion a year gets sent back to Mexico from the United States. I mean, this is incredible.
Absolutely, and if they would step up to the plate and pay their fair share of what are the health costs here, just the health costs, in fact.
But we know that's not going to happen. U.S. corporations.
Well, if it's not going to happen, then let's take a hard line on the border and let's stop being political. That's my main. I mean, I can't understand for the life of me why Perry in 6 years hasn't picked up a telephone and said, "Hello, Bill Richardson. Hello, Janet Napolitano."
Well, I'm sure you've seen the video of the illegal aliens running around with the Mexican flags. Does Kinky Friedman like seeing that?
Kinky Friedman feels that I just say what I think is right for the people of Texas. I'm not concerned about, if you ain't Texan, I ain't got time for you. If you're legal, if you're a U.S. citizen, if you're a Texan, then I've got time for you. And basically, I'm not afraid to offend anybody. And right now, the biggest problem I see is that Rick Perry and George W., and I like George W., I've described him as a good man trapped in a Republican's body, but he's a friend. But I will tell you that most of these politicians are afraid of offending Hispanics. And believe me, that is offending Hispanics.
Well, most Hispanics I know are against open borders in the polls.
Many of them have been in the military. It's a direct threat to them to be swarmed with illegals. When I was down on the...
We got to go to break. We'll talk about that when we get back.
All right.
The Genesis Communications Radio Network proudly presents The Alex Jones Show. Because there's a war on for your mind.
Well, you heard him. The latest Zogby poll is out. He is gaining ground on Rick Perry, the big government phony conservative. And our guest is Kinky Friedman. He, of course, is a native Texan, singer, songwriter, novelist, politician now, and former columnist for Texas Monthly. I know my parents are big fans of his writings, and I'm
not a politician. That's very important to point out. I'm a dreamer.
I know, but I'm just going off the encyclopedia here.
I'm a dreamer who never sleeps. I'm a compassionate redneck, but I'm not a politician.
Now, you brought up something. I want to get back into toll roads, the open border, the imploding sovereignty of this state. But you brought it up. You love George Bush. Now, let's get something clear here. I'm a true conservative, okay? Bush has spent more money than all presidents before him combined. He's got us in all these foreign wars and entanglements. He is roughly doubled. It's now more than doubled the size of the federal government. So, what are you saying, Kinky? I know he's a friend. You've met him.
That's all it is, Alex. That he's a friend, and I'm mostly a friend of Laura's. And I got to meet George through Laura and became close to George. And I think as governor, I think he can help us, and he hasn't so far. I don't think Perry has any rapport with him.
But now you're running against his minion, Perry.
Well, I think we heard this last week, that Karl Rove predicts that Kinky Friedman will beat Rick Perry in Texas, and that the White House will not be terribly unhappy about it either.
Well, Kinky, that's not good. If the White House is happy with you, we gotta worry about it.
We gotta distance ourselves a little bit, okay? Distance ourselves from the White House. I'm friends with Clinton too, But just because I'm the only man who has slept under 2 presidents at the White House, don't hold it against me. Basically, all we need is what George Washington said, Alex, common sense and common honesty, both of which are lacking from our elected leaders today.
There are. Let's get back to the border and the toll roads. I mean, obviously, there's a crisis on our southern border. What would you do, specifics, to deal with that problem with the drugs and the coyotes, the smuggling, that wide-open border? As the Border Patrol's told you, it is worse than it was before. What would you do as governor?
Well, I've suggested George 41. 41 invited me to Texas A&M a couple months ago to hear John McCain speak. And afterwards, I was telling George that my plan, the 5 Mexican Generals plan, which is given to me by Joaquin Jackson, retired Texas Ranger, one of my border advisors, to divide the border into 5 jurisdictions and to appoint a Mexican general in charge of each. And we give each man $2 million, which we hold for him. And every time we catch an illegal coming through his section, we withdraw $10,000. Now, this would shut off illegal immigration into Texas for a paltry $10 million.
Because their generals are so corrupt, they'd want to keep that money.
Let me tell you something. George 41 was laughing about this plan, and McCain says, and he was standing there, and McCain says, you know, that 5 Mexican Generals plan is better than anything we got going right now. And he's right. It's exactly what Microsoft does to stop hackers, Alex. They don't hire law enforcement people to find the hackers. They find the baddest hackers they can find and hire them. Now, this is the kind of thing we're going to have to do. We're going to have to do whatever it takes to shut off this border. What's happening now is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, what about just getting more funding for the state guard?
Sure, you do everything you can. Now, what Perry's been doing, sweeping it under the rug because he doesn't want to offend Hispanics. His people have told him, don't rock the boat. The Hispanics are starting to vote Republican. You've seen those big marches in Dallas and L.A. Don't make a big deal of this. That's exactly what he's doing. He ignored, I didn't even hear him a peep about the border for 5.5 years.
Well, Kinky, did you know Rob Allen and co. up in Dallas actually ran and funded and stirred up all those demonstrations? That was the White House running that whole thing.
Listen, when I was down in the valley recently, the Hispanics that I met down there told me, what are we going to do about all these Mexicans coming over here? Now, if I were in Austin talking about that, which I am now, people would say, Kinky's a racist. What are we going to do with all these Mexicans? Well, what are they going to do with all these Mexicans coming over here? They're threatening Hispanics who are Texas citizens, who are American citizens. Cesar Chavez was right.
Well, the vast majority of the illegal aliens are from Latin America, but we've got record numbers from Eastern Europe,
yes, we do.
Record numbers from the Middle East. I mean, you're not a country if you do not have a border. And I'm sure you know about the North American Union. Bush signed on to it, spp.gov. Just last year with the Prime Minister of Canada, Paul Martin, at the time, and he also signed on to it with Vicente Fox, and they're already giving Texas business owners North American ID, business ID numbers.
Well, the fact is, I don't have the answer to a problem this complex. Nobody else does either. I know one thing. I love the Minutemen, and here's why. Because when the Minutemen left Arizona, as you recall, when they went away for a while, the people that were the most relieved and happiest within 1,000 miles, the subgroup, were politicians. The politicians do not want the border on the evening news every night. They don't want anybody to shine a light and make the cockroaches scurry. I want to shine a light right on that border until we get it right.
Good. Kinky Friedman, we're going to come back. Calls for Kinky Friedman, 1-800-259-9231.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.